podcast is proudly brought to you by Traction Unlimited, creator of the TUI Legacy Pulling Tire. Traction Unlimited is a premier truck and tractor pulling tire cutting business located in Neoga, Illinois, owned and operated by Lincoln Andrews. Give Traction Unlimited a call and let them take care of your pulling tire needs. Welcome to the Pulling Your Chain podcast, where we exclusively cover antique tractor pulling. I'm your host, Dylan Ayler, along with my co-host, Willie Hahn. Willie, how are you this evening?
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Weather's starting to pick up. It's starting to get hot outside. Yeah. Summer pulling's well under its way, so it's going. This is episode 6. We've clicked 5 of these bad boys off, and won't be long. We'll be double digits. So
yeah.
First thing I'd like to bring up, we hit a halfway milestone, over 500 subscribers on the YouTube channel. It's a big deal. We get to 1,000. We're going to start working on trying to get some podcast equipment and start doing these things live. So I appreciate everybody that has tuned into the channel. It's a big deal for us. You know, just 6 episodes in, we're 500 subscribers already. So we couldn't do it without you guys. You know, everybody that watches the channel and puts in for it. So it's going good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was surprised when we hit that 500 mark.
For sure. I was kind of skeptical. It took off with a big boom and then it kind of tapered a little bit, but we're the shorts are pretty steady every day, and like I said, we're averaging almost 1,000 views on our videos. So like I said, without the people watching, we couldn't do this. Let's jump right into it. Recent pull reviews, Bulls and Pulls. Looks like they had a huge turnout. I've seen tons of videos from out there. That is a bucket list one for me. I want to go there.
Me too.
I want to go there. They look like they got it going on.
Yeah, great group of guys up that way. Corey he's a great guy. Puts on a pretty good show, it sounds like.
Yep, and he's fully invested in a pull tracker, and they got it going on out there. It's, like I said, it's a bucket list outdoor pool for me for sure. Next was Altenburg Egypt Mills. We had a good turnout. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check out. I posted some Ray-Ban Meta glasses videos from the onboard. Huge conversation piece. That sucker had like 600,000 views. It was incredible.
Really?
Yeah, it was like awesome. 665. It was, like I said, it was incredible. A lot of good comments, a lot of bad comments, but at the end of the day, it's comments. You know,
bald tires.
Bald tires and
wrong gear. And what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm a dumbass because I don't know how to run my tractor. But anyway, So if you haven't checked those out, make sure to check those out. Those are pretty cool. There'll be more of them to come. Next, Strawberry Point, Iowa.
Yes.
You said Mason Dighton, right?
Correct.
Is that you say that? 460. 5,500 farm win.
Yep, that's the class. They had a bunch of added money to that class in memorial of one of the local families added some money, and then another guy stepped up and added some money. So it was, I think there must have been 15, 20 tractors in that class, something like that. We did not do very well, but he did really well. So
now you said that he had just purchased that tractor, correct?
Yeah, this spring. This spring he just bought the tractor. Yeah, I think this was the third pull he was out on it, and went and won a big class with it.
No kidding.
Well,
jumping from a John Deere to a red one, he's probably super stoked.
Yes, exactly. I've been trying for a while to get him to switch over, and he finally did it.
Well, that's good. I posted a bunch of videos from out there. Looked like y'all had a good pull.
It was good. That's a really good. It's a small town deal. We pull everything over there: trucks, tractors, semis, big tractors, little tractors. A little bit of everything, and they do a really good job. Put on a really good show. It's not, they kind of break up the order. You know, they'll pull a couple tractor classes and a couple truck classes, and then some big tractors, and then back to small tractors again. And it can be frustrating for the small tractor guys, but it's good for the show to do it that way, because it's not.
Yeah, for sure. Looks like the track was like super long too. Is it like 400 foot or something?
It's got to be pretty close in there. They had scraped it off because we got rain the day before. There was a big dirt pile at the end. But some of the fast tractors in 65 open, there was some big Moline that runs with ECI, and then they let one of the V8 tractors run with there, and they put her in the dirt pile.
Wow. You Iowa guys with your long tracks.
Yes, we run long tracks.
For sure.
Good permanent tracks up
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Okay, moving right into upcoming pools. Busy month. July
Yes.
is crazy, and I apologize to the people I didn't get their pool on here. I got a bunch of them though. July 3rd, St. Mary's County Fairgrounds, Leonardtown, Maryland. 6 p.m. start time. Looks like they're going to pull 3,000 to 12,000 pound, 3.5 mile an hour, 6 and 8. So that's sounds like a full evening of pulling. Also, July 3rd, Gary, South Dakota, 11:30 start time. They're going to pull 3,500 to 19.5. I don't have the speed limits on that, but I imagine them boys in South Dakota, they're going to have multiples. Yeah, you probably you'll be able to go slow, go fast, all the way up to 19.5. So, sounds like if you can hang the weight, they're going to pull you.
Yeah.
July 4th, Cedar Falls, Antique Acres, 10 a.m. start time, 3.5 mile an hour, 45 to 75. 4 mile an hour, 4,000 to 65, and open 4,000 to 65. And then they're going to have, I think I read this right, a 5250 5 mile an hour and a 5500 7 mile an hour. That's going to be 100% payback. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, this is the one I put on. We do it for the local emergency services. They're trying to put up a new building, and we did it for the first time last year. This is our second year doing it. Hopefully the weather cooperates this year, and yeah, it should be fun. We pull all the way up to big tractors, 12.5 tractors, trucks, V8 mods. We'll pull just about anything.
Yeah. And good track.
Yes.
We went there for Baddest M. That place is awesome. So anybody that hasn't been to Antique Acres and Cedar Falls, make sure to check that one out. The next one, July 11th, The Vault at Plainsfield, Iowa. 11 a.m. start time. Looks like 4,000 to 13,000 pound, correct?
Yep.
And we are sponsoring that pool, so we will be a sponsor on the page. Yeah.
Yeah, we added money to the. Seems to be the biggest class around here anymore is the 5,500 farm class because our rules are pretty lax.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much no cut tires. That's the rule. And so we added some money to that 5,500 farm there, and then somebody else did, but. Yeah, farm classes there are 5 mile an hour, 18.4 uncut tire, and then all the way up, all the way down to 4,000. You run whatever you want, and
Heck
then
yeah.
Open classes are open. So
Yeah. Sounds like a good one.
it is.
I didn't have the mile per hour on that. It was not on the flyer, so I don't know if you know what exactly they're going to run as far as
farm
speed.
is 5, open is open. It goes up. In the heavier turbo stuff, the mile an hour goes up. I don't remember what it goes to.
Gotcha.
I don't ever pull any of that stuff, but
Yeah.
They'll pull anything there too. If you got something you want to pull, he'll hook it to the side. He don't care.
Heck yeah. July 21st, Monroe County Fair. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Waterloo, Illinois. 7 p.m. start time. 3750 to 6,000 4 mile an hour farmers. And then 4,000 to 6,000 7 mile an hour modified. They're going to pay out top 5, $100, 80, 60, 40, 20. Any questions on that? Give Jim Motzenbacher a call. He'll have more information on that. But yeah, that's a good one. Good track. Like I said, good turnout. And normally it's
good.
It's a good nighttime pool. July 25th, Ottawa County Fair. Oak Harbor, Ohio, 9 a.m. start time. Looks like they're going to pull antiques, 3,500 to 10,000. They got a Division II, 3.5 mile an hour, uncut, 35 to 85. A top cut, 3.5 mile an hour, 35 to 85. And then they're going to run a Division III, 6 mile an hour, which is 35 to 7,500. So lots of choices there. And then the last one is July 31st. It's the 100th annual Muscuda August Fest. Muscuda, Illinois, 7 p.m. start time. They're going to do an antique plow, classic classes, which I believe is basically straight out of the field. I think you're allowed wheel weights.
Yeah.
I think it's, like I said, no nothing. stock as can be. And then they're going to run a 4-mile-an-hour top cut, 3750 to 6500, and a 3750 to 6000, 6 and 8 mile an hour, and then they're going to run a 55 open. So Southern Illinois Pulling League is also going to have their classes, 4-mile-an-hour top cut, 5000 and 55, and then they're going to run a 5500, 6 and 8 mile an hour. So lots of choices in July.
Yeah. I got another one that was just sent to me, believe it or not. My phone just went off while we were sitting here. July 5th, Blooming Prairie, Minnesota. They got farm stock 3.5 mile an hour, 4,000 to 11.5. They got improved 4.5 mile an hour top cut, 4 to 65. They got a sportsman 6, 8, and 10 mile an hour, 45 to 11.5, and then open 45 to 65. And then they got some King of the Hill classes too, it looks like, up there. So that's July 5th, 9 a.m. start time in Blooming Prairie, Minnesota.
Gotcha. So lots of choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's picking up, going to get busy.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll proceed with our guest of the night. Next with our guest of the night, a controversial figure in the antique tractor pulling world, love him or hate him, Paul Crow, owner of C5 Performance. Can you give us a little bit of background on your tractor pulling and how you went about getting into antique tractor pulling?
I grew up on a small farm, so I've been driving tractors since I was, 9 years old. But I got into tractor pulling performance parts by accident. I actually spent most of my career in the motorcycle industry as a manager of several large dealerships and was heavily involved in racing. And then while we were doing motorcycle development, mostly electronic stuff, a few of my friends just said, hey, can we put something on my farm tractor? I'm having repeat problems with it. Or, hey, can you fix my skid steer? What can we put on there for an ignition that isn't, a pile of crap? So some people wanted more than the basic points or Pertronix replacement. And a lot of times, as you know, when you have ignition problems, the real issue is related to the wiring of the vehicle. But that is how I got into it. So it's kind of funny because, people would say, well, can you build something for my pulling tractor? And me being, naive, saying, what do you mean a pulling tractor? I mean, when I was a kid, you farmed and then you drove it to town and pulled it and then drove it home. The amount of money and dedication and time and research that you guys put into tractors is just mind-blowing. So I got sucked into it kind of by accident, and we started with ignitions, and then we got into developing our own carburetors, and then I got into building headers because some of those carburetors didn't fit. So and now I have a chassis dyno that we're going to build a dyno shop dedicated to pulling tractors on slicks, no bouncy tires. There's some technology that I'm aware of that will make that happen. So I've been in business 14-ish years, and before that worked for, let's say, 30 years in the motorcycle industry. So I'm just shy of 60. And I started tearing engines apart when I was about 9 or 10. Got into racing when I was 18, and I never got out of it. So I'm still working with non-tractor stuff, but 90% of my waking time is dedicated to using what's considered basic stuff in the motorcycle world or car world, the technologies that a modern car has, and modern motorcycles. And I'm trying to apply that to antique tractors.
Awesome.
Sometimes it's easy, and a lot of times you just want to bang your head on a wall, And again, some people are very open to that concept, and some people would very much like us to just close down and go away. So, but it is what it is. It doesn't matter what you do. You make sandwiches, ice cream, beer, music. Some people love you, some people hate you. My mom loves me. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We'll jump right into it. So we'll start with headers. So what's the purpose? Just give me a rough of what an exhaust header on a pulling tractor would give me. What's the purpose of a header versus a manifold?
All right. I think of it in two different ways, and I know most people don't. They say, hey, you make headers, thinking that it's exhaust, right? Because we've all had a friend that had a Camaro, a Mustang, motorhome, whatever, that had a header on it. So typically a header would be a non-factory, non-cast iron performance system, usually with tubing. And it's kind of interesting because we're getting into 3D technology, and I don't think that they'll call it headers at some point in time, because we'll be able to design an intake or exhaust system in 3D print out of metal, and it'll look like a factory exhaust, but inside the flow is what you want. So I think of a header as being a piece that should be dedicated to a specific engine, built in a very specific way that would be impossible financially to do if it was cast iron. I can manipulate steel, let's say, affordably using tubing, where you'd have to buy 10,000 cast iron manifolds, if you were going to have a foundry make it.
Yeah. So what are the biggest perform? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because on a tractor, a lot of times if it's a they're not a cross flow head, and because the intake and exhaust are bolted on at the same basic place, I always do intake and exhaust. I don't do one or the other.
Gotcha. So what's the biggest performance gains a puller can expect from a properly designed header?
Properly designed header can be anything from a mild increase in performance, i.e. torque, to phenomenal changes. And it has to do, like with anything else, it has to do with the overall build of your engine. If you've got the wrong size carburetor and crappy ignition, and you've got a cam that's too crazy, and your buddy went a little crazy with this new porting tool he wanted to brag about, you can really struggle to get gains with anything that I make. But generally, what I focus on, and what everyone should focus on, is if you're pace class pulling in particular, you can really fine tune your peak torque RPM. So you don't need a lot of RPM. I know there's a lot of 301s out there turning 5,000 plus RPM, but if you're pulling, let's say, 1,500 RPM up to 2,500 on a Farmall M, or you're pulling your 800 to 1,600 on a John Deere, then if you build it correctly, it will pull so hard on the bottom that the engine doesn't lose RPM as fast as it did before. And as you guys know, if you can have an engine hang at a particular RPM for just 1 second longer, all the way down the ladder at the end of a good pull, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, but I'm just saying realistically, if you gain 10 feet every time you pulled, look back at your records at where you were, where would that put you? And you haven't had to stroke it, you haven't had to chop the block apart, you haven't had to fill it with concrete, you haven't done anything. I'm not saying that doing those things are bad. I'm just saying that a lot of our customers either already did those and they want something to complement it, or like me, you either don't have or don't want to have the budget to do a $40,000 engine. And there are other things you can do besides that. I'm the bolt-on guy. I don't build anything that has to go inside the engine.
Yeah. So how does overall construction affect the efficiency of a header?
On some engines, I'll be kind of generic. On some engines, the change in the intake manifold has a much greater increase in efficiency. On some, it's the exhaust, and on some, it's 50-50. Depends on the engine. I won't bore you with the build details, but I mean, my expectations for, again, placing the peak torque where you want it. You're in a 4 mile an hour, 6 mile an hour, 8 mile an hour class, and you say, hey, I'm running X amount of RPM. But when I get down to this other RPM, it starts to drop fast. Oliver, I can pick on, I like Oliver, but when you see Olivers running around here, they'll pull really, really hard. But when they get to the point where they start to lose RPM, a lot of them just fall off like you shut the fuel pump off. part of that's design, cam grind, other things. Part of it has to do with the fact that you don't have, let's say, perhaps a matched intake and exhaust. So when they start to get down where you don't have RPM, so you don't have any horsepower, your peak torque is accidentally way too high, and it comes down hard like it fell off a cliff. And we can fix that using math.
So, what role does exhaust scavenging play in horsepower production?
Bigger than most people realize. When your piston's coming up on exhaust stroke, it's pushing the exhaust out. But as it gets to the top, it slows down and stops. You've got some overlap there where both your intake and exhaust valves are open. If you have scavenging, almost think of your exhaust system as a big shop vac, and it's drawing out, you could say sucking, it's a wrong technical term, but it's scavenging the exhaust. It's easy to do when the piston speed's high. So when the piston's halfway up, you don't even have to have an exhaust system on it. It's shoving everything out. At the end of the exhaust stroke and the beginning of the intake stroke, if you have proper speed, velocity of your exhaust system, and it can continue to draw or pull that exhaust out, just getting that extra 5 or 10% of wasted, burn fuel out of there to make room for a full intake stroke of all fresh stuff it's mind-bendingly power altering. So that's essentially what you're doing. You're trying to build a shop vac without having a shop vac on it.
Gotcha. Do different engine combinations require different header designs? I know I've seen some pictures of your header designs from the early days till now, and you're constantly evolving. Just does a different design change based on the engine combination?
Yeah, the beauty of being self-employed is you can, if you do tests and you find something that works better, the very next header I make can be that new design. I don't have to go and ask the committee or the boss or the budget guy. I can make really cool designs and lose money sometimes when you're set up for making one thing. The key obviously is to make enough profit to stay in business. But like I just posted, I think yesterday, not that this is about me, but like when we first got into making 6-cylinder stuff and we were using a wideband O2 sensor to try to see whether we were building a header and carburetor combination that was flowing, let's say, the correct lambda numbers, meaning was it not too rich, not too lean, under load, you're shooting for like 0.85 lambda. And when we were finding things wrong, like you were having struggles tuning a particular tractor, or it wasn't performing the way that you felt it should perform, and then you put the wideband meter on there, and I worked with you and your dad on yours in placement of where your O2 sensor was. Remember that? We came down, and
For sure.
even where it was, it made a huge difference on what reading you got. But the main learning thing that you and I and your dad came up with, and when I was working on 6-cylinder, I did a lot of work on the Farmall 301 because my neighbor Ryan had one, and he was okay being a guinea pig. Then we were trying to make it so that the amount of gasoline that reached each cylinder was equal. Well, a John Deere has some severe problems that can be overcome, but on the Deere, we're fixing an exhaust issue that fixes the intake. On a 6-cylinder, whether it be Oliver, a Waukesha, Farmall, my Jeep CJ5's got an AMC 6-cylinder, they all have the same issues. When you have an inline 6, you're delivering too much fuel to the middle cylinders and not enough to the outside cylinders. Doesn't matter who made the engine. They're all the same issue. So my goal is to make sure that if I put an O2 sensor on any particular cylinder, I would get exactly the same reading as I would across the board. You'd think that they would have figured that out long before I got involved in this. And no, and even in the car world, if you test Offenhausers and Weilands and all the intake manifolds that are, Cliffords, who I'm friends with, none of them perform the way you think they do. You think they were been in business for 40 years. They'd be just the cylinder to cylinder would be absolutely perfect. They're not even close. They're not even close. So that's what I focus on. And just purely math. I don't have any opinions on anything. Just try to make every cylinder work the same as the one next to it.
So, how do different RPM ranges influence your header specs? I know, like, it's got to change based on where your tractor runs in the RPM range.
Yeah, mathematically, I won't share nerdy stuff here. We could do a second round if you feel like you want to. Uh, when you're building horsepower, the mathematical formula for that involves RPM. So let's take a John Deere G, right? It can stop the earth and rotate it the opposite direction, right? It's got tons of torque and it does it at a very low RPM. It's fun to be involved in because I've never been a huge John Deere fan. We had them on the farm. You can't turn crazy RPM, but the Thunder, it's just fun to be involved in that stuff. Now, when I'm working on motorcycles, we're turning 16, 17,000 RPM. So you can go 200 miles an hour in a standing mile, and we have broke world records doing that. But you're talking about a motorcycle that can turn the kind of RPM to get you 250 horsepower with no torque. I mean, let's face it, they don't have any torque. They're getting amazing numbers or amazing acceleration by getting RPM. So when I'm working on, say, a John Deere or Massey or even my Alice farm tractor, they can't turn a lot of RPM. It's a stock engine. I mean, you have to look at how the whole engine was built. So on something that's high horsepower, then normally we want the peak torque to be at a higher number. If you're turning 4,000 RPM, then your peak torque needs to be much higher than on a Deere. So yeah, that's why I don't do anything cookie cutter. We generally want to talk to the customer, and I want to know, where do you want to see your improvement be? What RPM is at the bottom of your pulling range? If you drag it down to 1,400 all the time or 1,200, then your peak torque, we need to have a discussion on where you want me to put it. Because I can put it, well, I won't tell any secrets, but I mean, you know how close I can get to that perfect number.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, some people tell me a number that their friends told them they should want, or their head porting guy went real big on everything, and you can't put peak torque where you want it because the engine won't play ball with you. But you never build a header wrong to match other wrong parts. That's the one easy rule of thumb. I build it the way it should be built, and if it's on an engine that's beautiful, it will perform great. And if I put it on an engine that is built completely wrong, it will still be better, but it won't be where it could be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. This kind of rolls into my next question of, how does a poorly designed header actually hurt performance?
I have to watch what I say here because I already have my little group of people that don't love us.
The minions. It's all right. Shout out to the minions.
Well, I'll use a motorcycle world and my Jeep. Jeep's a good example. So there used to be 6 or 8 different companies that made headers for Jeeps because CJ5, CJ7s, they made, I don't know, maybe millions. When I was a kid, they were all over the place. So the only header company that is left that makes one for my particular application is Hedman Header. Hedman tells you what the primary tube diameter is. It's the first tube that comes out of the engine called the primary, and then secondary, tertiary, on and on. So they give you the number, and of course I've got all my math, both the math that everybody has and a lot of math that nobody has. So I crunched the numbers. 3,300 RPM is peak torque. Horsepower, of course, will be higher than that, but the grunt will be at 33. AMC made all 258s peak torque at 16. So my head porting, cam grind, everything on this engine is designed to have the most amount of, let's say, hill climbing grunt at 16. Hedman makes a header at 33. And you got to ask yourself, what the heck are you thinking? Because if you put that header on there, and everyone says it, I've read every review of everyone that ever put one on there, it won't drive off-road very well, but it runs a lot better on the highway. Same thing happens on motorcycles. You buy a performance header, Vance and Hines, Muzzy, whatever, Super Trap, Kirker. I mean, pick your poison, whatever brand you love. I've got an Akrapovic on mine, or an Arrow. If you go with big tubes and you design it for high RPM, you're going to get socked in the shorts on low end. And again, I think you need to be realistic about how you actually want it to turn out. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's...
Yeah. Well, basically, bigger's not always better.
Most headers for tractors, in my opinion, if I ran the numbers, are built for too high RPM. So when you're screaming your farm LM down the track, because they'll allow it at 3,000 or more RPM, you will look like a hero. If they hold you to the RPMs and you're 20% over and you're pulling in a 4-mile-an-hour pace class, it will suck. You really struggle because you have to keep the RPM higher than you can run it, and you're never going to be running at your peak torque. And when you have your peak torque down low, you are going to give up power up high. You can't have it both ways. I mean, you run the math. And the only math that's actually available is primaries. You can't actually calculate how to build a correct header. You can only calculate how to build what size the first tube is, the primary tube. And that's not even a secret. That's cubic inches of one of your cylinder. So take a 400 cube M, that's 100 cubes per cylinder. Take 100 cubes times whatever RPM you want your peak torque divided by 88,200, and that gives you area. Convert area to diameter, and there you go. There's your header tube size, but that's only for the first tube. So anyway, I'm just using math. I always use math. I would never build a header that somebody wants me to build it where I know it's going to be wrong. I'll just pass on the order. I just don't. I've never built a header the wrong way, and I never will. And that's just me.
So how do you go about determining the right header construction for a customer's tractor?
I'll ask you a bunch of dumb questions on where do you pull and where do you think that you struggle and how low do you go before you get to the point where you got your foot hovering over the clutch where you're ready to push it in. Those kinds of questions. People will call and they want a header or a carburetor or an ignition, and they say, I have never powered out. I spin out, and I say, oh, so you just like to cherry pick, right? You build everything out of aluminum, and you want to go beat up,
Yeah.
Super Cubs. Okay,
Yeah.
great. You should be really proud of yourself because you've never actually competed with anyone. Now go out and pull in a 6,000-pound class against some nasty, nasty tractors, get your ass kicked, and then tell me at what RPM it started to swan dive fast, and let's work on that. Again, I will ask you what your goal is, and then I will do the math. And then that tells me what I need to do based on what it is. And there's sometimes when the math is wrong. John Deere, I use a formula that is not the formula. For carburetors, we did a lot of airflow testing and found out some other things and tried a bunch of things and found out that the mathematical formula that works on every vehicle in the world doesn't work on a John Deere. So I made my own mathematical formula based on our test data, and I use my own formula for that. Not bragging, just saying you're using a formula and it never gives you the answer you want, then you have to kind of go backwards.
Yeah.
It's just like Dynajet made their first dyno. Their horsepower was way wrong. They could never figure out mathematically how to get correct horsepower readings on a Dynajet. So what they did was Honda published data for the CBX 1000, and Dynajet knew exactly what it produced for horsepower and torque, and they manipulated their dyno until the CBX on a dyno read what they knew the Japanese told them it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a funny story, but it's accurate.
Reverse engineered it.
And everything after that was all based on what the CBX 1000 produced on the dyno. I mean, again, I find it humorous. I also think hats off to Dynajet for just admitting that doing it that way got them the result they wanted.
For sure.
So anyway.
So hardest design you've had to date as far as header construction?
The first Oliver that I ever did one for, and that header never actually got bolted on. It's still brand new in my office. Um, I built a 6-into-1 exhaust where all 6 tubes were exactly the same length, going into a stainless steel cast 6-into-1 with a massive merge bullet. I know other people will build 6-into-1s for red diamonds and other things, but they all go into usually a flat plate. So imagine mounting a coffee can on top, 6 tubes going into the bottom of the coffee can, and then exhaust comes out the top. You can't do that. Well, I mean, you can, but you can't if you're doing it correctly. Anyway, so I had this really expensive, really awesome 6-into-1 stainless steel with this massive merge bullet, was the size of a can of soda, in the middle of it. And then I built all of the intakes identical, curves, identical lengths, and somehow managed to make it where it would fit under the hood of an Oliver. Again, I've never used it, but that was the very first one that I tried to make equal intake and equal exhaust. And then after that, the Oliver 310 is the worst. It's a 12-port non-cross flow. 12 tubes on one side, roughly 4.5 inches of hood clearance. It's almost impossible. I built them. They work fantastic, but it's not profitable.
Yeah.
That's the toughest one.
Gotcha. Last question about headers. Does the exhaust design directly affect the intake?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. The more efficient the scavenging, and again, you see a lot of headers, and I'm not picking on anyone. Every header, I think, that I've ever seen, except for mine, takes all the primaries and puts it into one collector. So, on a John Deere, obviously, it's a 2-into-1, so are mine. But but on the 4 cylinders, they do a 4-into-1 collector on the end, or a 6-cylinder is a 6-into-1. And I don't. Mine are 4-into-2-into-1, or on my 6 cylinders I'm building right now, that's a 6-into-3-into-2-into-1. So, that gets a little crazy, but then you're trying to keep the velocity where it's supposed to be. And you know what? If you could run a tractor without a hood, man, I would love that day. You could do some crazy, crazy stuff, no compromise, right?
Yeah.
But again, people are asking you to build the most magnificent Formula One style intake and exhaust. And oh, by the way, we have 3.5 inches of hood clearance. How in the heck do you do that?
Yeah.
The challenge. It's fun, and our stuff works. It's just not everybody wants to have that bolted to their tractor. But anyway, it's fun to make.
While we're talking headers,
Yes, sir.
I know collector is important. Collector size, diameter is how important is pipe size and length?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. That's actually probably the best question so far. Okay, so when you want to have the least amount of cylinders go into a collector that you can get away with. Okay, you also want to pair your cylinders correctly, which very few people do because they don't know how to. Not picking on anyone, and they don't teach that in shop class. And then the angle of the converging and diverging cone, if you have one, meaning, looks like an hourglass right after the collector. Okay, that diameter and length and angle of those cones are important. And the final exit pipe is important, and even if it's going to be a stepped pipe. So without getting too crazy, let's say on my 6 cylinders, you always see that I have 3 short little pyramids. So I take 6 pipes and I get them into 3 as quickly as I can. And then those 3 come together into either 2 or 1, and everything is calculated mathematically. But again, there is no formula for calculating secondaries and whatnot. So here's what I would say. You want to pair cylinders. So let's say if you run a 4-cylinder, right? Okay. So
Yes.
you want to pair 1 and 4, and then 2 and 3. right? Because 1 and 4 are up at the same time, and 2 and 3 are as well.
Yep.
So if you could pair 1 and 4 together and 2 and 3 together and keep all of those pipes the same diameter and the same exact length, and then pair the 1 and 4 with the 2 and 3 into another merge. And you might say, well, why in the hell would you do that? That is really complicated. Why don't you just do a 4 into 1? Because of the data that I have, that only works at really high RPM.
Mm-hmm.
When you go 4 into 1, you're going from a certain diameter that is carefully calculated into a chamber that is drastically too big. So your airspeed slows down. And you dump it into a great big pipe because everybody loves big pipes, just like polished rims. And then you've lost all your velocity. See, if I blow into a straw in your face, it pisses you off because I could knock your glasses off. If I blow through a 6-inch irrigation pipe out on the farm, you won't even feel it on the other end. Yeah. So if bigger is better, then why don't they just put 6-inch primaries on every engine? Why isn't every port 4 inches in diameter? And it's not because there's no velocity. And velocity is king. It's not back pressure. Back pressure is a made-up term for people who don't know, right? I mean, back pressure is more for air and water management. It's not used for engine stuff. What you want is a certain velocity. So whether you're aiming for 200, 250, 300 feet per second, whatever it is that you determine is your goal, you can calculate your proper diameter of pieces in your exhaust to try to hit that goal. So let's just say that you and I talk to some nerdy head guy and he tells us that on your particular tractor, you need to shoot for 180 feet per second. Okay, great. Then we can calculate what diameter gets you 180 feet per second. And then when we merge those pipes together, you don't want to lose that speed. Yep. So you can't go real big on the collector, and you really shouldn't go into a 4 into 1 or a 6 into 1, God forbid, because you've lost all your velocity. I'm giving away some things I really don't want to talk about, but it's really important though, because again, everyone wants a big 5-inch stack on a tractor. What's the airspeed at the end of that? Have anyone who measured, or I should say, is anyone who built a pipe like that actually measured airspeed at the end of that pipe? I know the answer. The answer is no. Yeah, probably because you've never built it that way. Right. So it's difficult on a John Deere, though, because you got one cylinder firing and half a crank rotation, another cylinder firing, and then a big, long wait for the whole thing to happen. Mm-hmm. And when you're pushing a 1,005 cube John Deere, imagine having a 500 cubic inch Cadillac pushing all 8 cylinders out at once. And then half a rotation, another 500 V8 Cadillac engine pushing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You can't just say, well, hey, my calculator says this, that, or the other thing. Again, it's a little bit of, maybe you got to fudge it for a Deere, but for a 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, right. So again, on a drag car, a 4 into 1, perfectly fine. You're turning super high RPM, you're keeping it up there, that's fine. But when you start to drag your RPM down, a 4 into 1 collector or a 6 into 1 collector gets worse and worse and worse the farther down the track you go. In my testing and in the data that I got was from 2 of my friends that designed this stuff for multi-million-dollar corporations, and I happen to have their test data. So their test data confirms my own experiences, I guess. I hope I answered that okay for you.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Bigger's not better.
Yes.
Almost never.
Most of my tractors all have small pipes on them. They sound terrible. I don't like how they sound, but it works.
No, well, it's funny. I was just going to say they sound awesome. They sound like motorcycles are real high pitched, right?
It's the pop from the when you come out of the throttle, it gets a little. It's a raspy, poppy.
If you want to go with a real tall pipe, and some of our customers do, some customers. There's a certain mathematical length that they need to be after the collector. Okay, so if you want to go longer than that, then you can go with a stepped exit. Let's just say that your exit was 2¼ inches, then you could go to 2½ halfway up. You need to be very, very careful though, because when you get the sound that we all like, 429 Mustang, 454 Chevelle. Let's just say 426 Hemi so we don't piss off the Chrysler guys. When you have an old muscle car like my classmates had when I was in high school, there is nothing in the world, in my opinion, that sounds more awesome. But they also did exhaust testing to try to get that sound.
Yes.
When they were racing, they didn't use that system, and the racing cars had a much, much smaller system.
Mm-hmm.
Take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Switch gears a little bit here. We'll jump into some carburetor questions for you if you don't care. What's some of the most common problems you've seen in the old style updraft carburetors, whether it's a Zenith, a Stromberg, just we're at a huge disadvantage having to run an updraft carburetor. Just what are some common problems?
An updraft carburetor is not a disadvantage as long as you have proper signal from the carburetor to the engine. Because of gravity, you can make a lot of mistakes on a V8 car. And as long as the gasoline makes it out of the discharge tube or the emulsion tube, whatever you want to call it, it's going to fall into the engine. And because the intake is nestled between the cylinder heads, there's always going to be enough heat to atomize that fuel and burn a decent amount of it. We've all been to a car show where some guy cruises by in his beautiful Cutlass, and you just want to puke because it just smells like raw fuel. Just, oh my God, it's like, how can you stand that? It just burns your eyes. So again, on a downdraft carburetor, you can be massively large, you can bore it and do all kinds of dumb things to it, and it will still function. On a motorcycle or a John Deere, same thing. Gravity is not necessarily, it's not your friend, but it's not your enemy on a Deere. So on a side draft, again, you can get away with having a pretty hacked up carburetor and it still functions. When you get to an updraft carburetor, if one of the 10 steps is jacked up, it doesn't work right. That's not even what I don't like the most. The biggest struggle we have is that carburetor was designed for medium load, reliable farm use. It had to start in Texas at 110, in upper Michigan in -40. It had to rake hay, cut hay, haul firewood, haul manure, and it had to be reliable to the nth degree, because if you hated that tractor, when you went to town to the feed mill, you were going to tell anyone that would stand next to you and hear of all the problems you had. So a farm carburetor normally only has 2 circuits, right? It's got an idle screw and a load screw. What about everything in the middle? Didn't need it. You never pulled your M when you were hauling manure to the point where you stalled the engine. I mean, that's not, when we were hauling hay wagons, we live on the side of a hill. You picked the gear that you needed at the top of the hill. You could hit the bottom in 4th gear, but you weren't going to make it to the top unless you were in 2nd. So you put it in 2nd gear and you went slow because nobody wants to throw a rod on a farm tractor. And, again, it was built for a different reason, just like Stromberg was built for an aircraft that ran at 3/4 full throttle all the time. And I don't like Strombergs for that reason. They don't run right. They weren't built correctly for low RPM. So the people that like them say, well, you're not supposed to pull your engine down that low when you're pulling. Okay, but I would argue that if you had fuel injection, you would. You can't on a farm carburetor because the carburetor is limited by how it was designed in 1930s, 40s, and 50s. So I would just say lack of circuitry, which, when we were making our aluminum carburetor, which I know, Norm's still making them, but our farm carburetor had a low, a mid, and a high, plus an idle circuit. So the Mikuni conversions I'm doing now have 5 fuel circuits. And you know that because you've worked with me on those. So other than having fuel injection where it is constantly changing based on a million different things, and it's got a computer that can do 50 million calculations per second, a carburetor is limited really by its overlapping circuits.
Gotcha.
But that's the main problem. And again, the other thing is that there's no reliable flow data. So when someone calls, and I get calls all the time for people that never bought anything from me and never will, and they say, hey, I'm building this engine, I'm X amount of cubes, I'm struggling to find a carburetor. This is what I have. Will it work? And then they say, well, what does your tractor need for CFM? And they don't know. And I say, well, the carburetor you're going to use, what does it flow? I don't know. What vacuum does your tractor pull? I don't know. And sometimes people don't even, they're building a tractor and they don't even know what RPM range they're going to run. So I just say, wow, it's kind of like walking out in the woods with whatever gun you grabbed and then expect to shoot any animal that comes up on you in any condition. And no, normally your deer gun's your deer gun. Your prairie dog hunting gun is your prairie dog hunting gun. If you went black bear hunting or grizzly bear hunting, you'd have a totally different gun. That's the excuse I use to have as many as I have.
Gotcha.
But that's the truth, though.
So what's some common mistakes you've seen people make when tuning a carburetor?
Too big. There's been several people that have convinced a large portion of the tractor pulling world that they need their venturis hogged out where they aren't even a venturi anymore, or replaced with a plastic sleeve with literally no venturi in it. They bore out the holes in the emulsion tube without knowing which holes to bore and why they're even boring them, because people told you to bore them, so you do, right? And so I would say modifying carburetors without knowing actually how that carburetor functions. When in doubt, don't drill it out. It's just really hard to fill a hole back in. So that's the main thing. And then the other thing, and I don't know how to fix this, in the motorcycle world, you don't do anything until you make a running fuel level test. So like it'll be right in the service manual. You start the engine up. They have this little hose that attaches to the bottom of the carburetor, and you loop it up. And then when you're running the vehicle, just like toilet bowl level, you can see with the carburetor on the vehicle, with the vehicle running, you can see where the level is, and the manufacturer will tell you where it's supposed to be. You don't do any tuning or anything until you know what the running fuel level is. Zenith, in one of their factory books, said they should be 5/8 of an inch below the gasket surface of the bowl, which is brilliant. Why everyone else didn't, I don't know. If anyone has any information on that, I'd love to know what it is. But again, having too low a fuel level is sucking air through more of the holes in the emulsion tube than it's supposed to. If the fuel level is too high, it's sucking too much fuel. And if you're going to try to do tuning and you're running the wrong fuel level, your frustration level is going to get high real fast. So I would say, start with just basic stuff. The fuel level should never be higher than the gasket, period. There's no carburetor in the world that does that. So again, if your fuel level is way too high, bend the float tab and get it down where it's supposed to be.
That kind of piggybacks into my last question. So how does someone go about selecting the right size carburetor for their tractor?
First thing you want to do is calculate what your engine is supposed to have. It's a little tricky, but I'll give you the mathematical formula. It is cubic inches of your engine times the RPM at which you're trying to determine what you need, times VE, which is your volumetric efficiency, divided by the number 3456. The problem is on tractors, what do you use for VE? Volumetric efficiency is a complicated test where you're determining how much horsepower you can produce based on a certain number of pounds or ounces or whatever of fuel. It's not a test that anyone does in tractor world. It's not even fun to do in motorcycle world. So normally I use 70%. In a car world, 80, 90, almost up to 100, you could do that, especially with fuel injection. You could get really close to 100. A farm tractor, 70 is very realistic. On a John Deere, probably 50 or 60, but I don't use that number for a couple of reasons. If you got a John Deere and you want to know more, call me. So what you want to do is you want to say, okay, Willie, what's the most RPM that you run on your tractor typically?
2,400 wide open is what it is.
Okay, and it pulls down nicely, probably between 18 and 22. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
And you can get down to what, 14, and still have a little grunt left in it?
Yeah, maybe a little less, but not a whole lot less than that. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're trying to calculate your CFM for 1,200 and then for 24 or 2,500, you'd find that your number is wildly different.
Yes. Yes.
So what I typically do is I would shoot for your high. Now 24 is not revving it up in the parking lot for your girlfriend.
Yeah.
24 is on the track with the sled.
Mm-hmm.
You could, at least for the first half, you can run 24 and hold that. Okay.
Yep.
So take your 2400 and shoot for about 80% of that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because if you buy a carburetor that's designed to run at 24, it's going to run like a bag of shit down low at 12 and
Yes.
14. So you're
Mhm.
giving up a little bit of airflow on the top so that when you drag down, you're falling into an area where the carburetor actually works better. And Alice Chalmers did this from the factory. We did a lot of testing, and they undersized their carburetors.
Yeah.
But then if you were under a really heavy load, the tractor didn't stall. And I've done it with my own tractor. You see videos on my Facebook where I'm plowing at 600 RPM. Who the hell plows at 600 RPM? I do. Because again, if I get it down to the point where I know the engine's about to shut off and I whack the throttle and it comes right back up to where I was before, then I know that my intake and exhaust system and my carburetor has been chosen properly, that I have the kind of throttle response that people, die for. So on yours, you take your 2400 and you'd say what's roughly 80% of that, and then that's the CFM that you want to shoot for, again, using VE of, let's say, 0.7. So however many cubic inches you are, let's say you got a 421, take 421 times whatever the 80% of 24 number is, times 0.7 and divide it by 3456. And that gives you the CFM that you're going to try to shoot for a carburetor. And that will give you, again, a good compromise. Now, if you say, well, I can run 24, but man, I like to just drag it down on his knees all the time. Okay, well, then go a little bit smaller. You give up a little bit of CFM on the top. It isn't going to matter that much because if you're running 24 at the beginning of the pull, it's not really under load.
No.
It's the last quarter of the pull.
Mm-hmm.
And Dylan knows as well as I do, if you go a little bit too big, when in doubt, go a little bigger. On an updraft carburetor, it will kick you in the balls every time.
I've been that way with the stock Farmall carburetors on H's. Everybody was always, well, just put an M carburetor on it. Okay, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to put it on a dyno, and then I'm going to show you that it's not going to work. I've done that. We're just changing ventures. I went too big and started coming back down, and it made all the world of difference.
So one quick thing, and this I think is important for people to understand. Again, I'm not doing this podcast to try to get more business. I'm just trying to help some people that are heading in the wrong direction. So they'll call me and say, hey, I need a carburetor for my blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, well, why? And they say, because I need a bigger carburetor. I hear it every week. And I say, why do you think you need a bigger carburetor? Well, at the end, I run out of fuel. And they go, okay, explain a little more. And what it comes down to is this. They can rev it up in there at the beginning of the track when they're hooked to the sled. When you get to the end of the pull, if they have an air fuel meter on it, or if they're watching smoke out of the pipe, or if they're checking their plug color or whatever, all indications are at the end of the pull, the tractor's running out of fuel, running lean. Mm-hmm. So you say, well, I need a bigger carburetor. And I say, no, it's going to make it worse. Some people believe me, some people don't. Mm-hmm. Go buy whatever your tractor, you put a 2.125 Zenith on it. Doesn't matter to me. It's not my tractor. Put an R9 on it. Let's go really big, right? The problem is that when you get under heavy load, your vacuum drops to almost nothing. Mm-hmm. On a motorcycle or a car, we could shoot for theoretical 0 to 2 inches of vacuum and you'd be okay. Again, as long as you have a little bit of vacuum to draw fuel out of a V8 engine, it's going to go downhill because of gravity. On an updraft carburetor, you need more vacuum than you probably think you do. So again, if you have too big of a carburetor, when your vacuum starts to drop and your RPMs start to drop and your tractor is struggling to have the same effect of sucking fuel out of the carburetor, a large carburetor won't deliver any fuel at all. So again, if the only time you're running lean is when you're under a heavy load, okay, so when you ran 2,500 RPM, it ran fine. You got 3/4 of the way down the track, your RPMs are down to 1,600, right? So your CFM is almost cut in half, but you have no vacuum left and your tractor goes lean. You went too big, period. There is no exception to that rule. If you can't draw fuel under load, at a lower RPM that you could draw fuel when you first got the chain tight, your carburetor is just flat out too big, or your intake is hogged out too big, or your intake valves are the size of dinner plates and they're too big, or all of the above. But what I'm saying is normally your friends on Facebook have chosen a carburetor for you that assured you would never beat them at a pull.
Yeah, I've actually dealt with that firsthand. On the 460 that I had that had the DT360 in it, it came with a 9 on it, Stromberg 9, and wide open, it was great. But as soon as it pulled down, and if you ever had to get out of the throttle, it would just snuff it completely. We ended up putting a 7 on it, and it made all the difference. It was just incredible.
So when I have a friend who runs in a real unique situation. They're running Farmall M's, but they're pulling with a real small club that allows them to do whatever they want to. It's essentially gloves off, show up, jet powered. They don't give a shit, right? I mean, it's basically you have to your hitch and your tire size are important. Nothing else matters. So in that situation, it was really unique because the header that I built and the carburetors that we did, and even the ignition timing maps that we made, were for a tractor that I'm not used to. I'm not used to dealing with that. They would run that thing at 4,000 RPM, and they would run 4,000 all the way down the track. So let's say the accelerator pump was set to kick in at idle, like yours is. If you're running, I know you're running an aluminum carburetor, Willie. So, so if you went back down to idle and you whacked the throttle, your accelerator pump would probably be set to kick in right there. But then in their situation, they're running wide open. And they might get out of the throttle to 3/4 throttle and then get right back into it and they're balls out again. So in that situation, your peak torque on your header needs to be appropriately matched for how you're going to pull. You can't just throw a cookie cutter Farmall M header on there. It would not run at all like that. And the carburetor, I set up the accelerator pump and all the jetting to kick in and wide open. I mean, this tractor's running balls out the whole way. So again, that's why you can't go to our website and just say, "Well, I want to order this, that, or the other thing." For one thing, I never got caught up on anything. I've been behind since the first day it was open. But I also refuse to hire a bunch of people to make generic parts.
Yes.
Because out of 10 people, only 2 people that buy generic parts are really truly happy. And we're getting into motorcycle tuning when the dyno, our dyno facility is done. I don't want to drag this thing out, but so we've got this massive dyno. It's 2,000 horsepower plus, 200 plus mile an hour dyno. And it's got a split roller in it. We're going to do motorcycle and tractor development on it. So my 2 sons, they want to do, excuse the train.
No, you're good.
My 2 sons want to do fuel injection stuff, tuning. Right now, they pay a company to do it, and they do a crappy job. They give it more fuel at higher RPM. So if you're going 150 miles an hour, you can feel it pull harder. When you're obeying the speed limit and driving in regular street mode, my oldest son Alex has a CBR 1000, has more than enough power to kill you instantly. But he says, "Dad, when you're going to pass a car, you still got to downshift. You spend hundreds of dollars on a tune, and it doesn't run any better where he uses it." Yeah, if we were in the Utah salt flats and he was trying to hit 250 miles an hour, sure, that tune would work. So again, one of the things that we're going to try to do is not only are we going to be testing all of our header designs and tweaking as needed, and we have already done this. It just, I don't like borrowing other people's dynos. So we'll have a shop here with a chassis dyno. We have a PTO dyno. I have a glass engine with a built-in dyno on it for testing as well. So we've got two wind tunnels and a Superflow 600 flow bench. So for my quote-unquote retirement, I hope to be doing a lot of development stuff and not just going by what other people have told me, but to actually prove my own theories. Dylan, your dad, Jim, I know, had said, "Hell yeah, let's, we're about the same age. Like, let's slide into retirement by just locking ourselves in the dyno room for a week at a time, and let's just learn."
For sure.
You got to be open-minded, though. That's the one thing that hurts people is they're not open-minded. They say, "Well, Grandpa won that pole back in '73, wearing a blue shirt. I wear the same blue shirt, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
and if you were a science major in college like I was, if you follow basic rules, Newton's law of motion will make you rethink your six-cylinder intake all day long, because there's not a six-cylinder intake in the world built using Newton's law. So anyway, that's all I got for today.
Well,
I hope I didn't bore you.
no, absolutely
No.
not. Thank you for all the information. That's all I got for today. We will definitely have to continue this conversation. We'll have you back on. But keep up the good work. Thank you for all your time. Thank you
Thanks
for all
for
the
asking me.
Yeah, thanks for all the information. That was good. So,
Yes.
like I said, thank you for
Well,
all
it
your
was nice
time.
hanging out with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll do it again. All right,
Yeah.
that was good.
It was good. A lot of good
A
information.
lot of good
that I think
information.
It will help a lot of people.
For sure, and that was the
know,
whole point of me asking him to come on here. Like it was, I know there's people that don't like him. I know there's people that like him. It's all about let's try to learn. You know,
Yeah.
good, bad, otherwise. Let's talk the facts, keep the facts, and let's try to learn. So, hope that was a lot of good information for you all. Like I said, we're gonna keep trying to grow this thing, and I want to say thank you again for all the continued support. We couldn't do this without you guys. This is driven by you, the pullers. We do this for you guys. And remember, if you haven't already, make sure to smash that like button and hit the follow button. We're going to continue to try to do these once a month. Said we're eventually going to get to where we're going to do live shows. So we might show up at your local pool and sit down and we'll have a conversation. So.
Absolutely.
Willie, I think that's all I got for this evening.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
Well, there's one thing I forgot to mention in the polls. Antique Acres normal yearly show. John Deere is the feature tractor this year. They're doing a special John Deere toughest deer thing. They're going to pull the tractors in the normal classes, but they're going to place them separately from everybody else. They're doing a 45 to 65 deal. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work. You can go to the Antique Acres website and kind of look at how they're going to do it. They're doing a mod, which is a top cut 4 mile an hour class, and then an open class for all of them. Should be another neat, pretty deal. I'd like to see a lot of tractors show up for that. I know they did Massey last year, and it was pretty weak. But, there's a lot of deers out there. I know there's a lot of good deers out there. I hate to say that, but
there is. I mean, that's just
yeah.
When they did the toughest deer over in Illinois, man, them boys showed out.
Oh yeah.
There's all over. I mean, hell, South Dakota's got some, Illinois' got some. They're all over. So yeah, that'd be good for them to show out for toughest deer.
Yes.
But yeah, that's all I got. If you're good, I'm good.
I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
Well, we will catch you all at the next one.